The M4 chip family is finally here and it is so exciting. However, should you upgrade? So let's take a look and see what they're putting it into. There's the iMac, the MacMini, the MacBook Pro, and we have the upcoming Mac Studio and the rumored iMac Pro. Now this can be really complicated going over everything that Apple has, as we have 62 different possibilities, and that's just for the MacBook Pro. But what about all the others, and how do we compare them together? So in this video, I have narrowed the scope down to the consumer, prosumer, and professional, depending on where you fall, so you know which product would actually work best for you. So the first thing we need to do is take a look at what the general consumer is going to want to use with the basic M4 chip. First up, let's take a look at the all-new iMac. It does have the original but more vibrant colors available. It comes with the base M4 chip, which has a 10-core CPU with only 4 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores. But more importantly, the GPU is what we're going to be looking at today. This has a 10-core GPU with dynamic caching and ray tracing, giving it a bit of a boost. So the new iMac is going to be absolutely great for anybody who just needs to do their daily tasks. You can run your business and stuff like that on there. However, we really rely on the GPU for video editing. If you start doing motion graphics, you're denoising, you're doing color grading, or even a lot of audio, that M4 chip CPU is not going to really help you with only a 10-core GPU. So before we get into the cost of things, I want you to understand I'm not looking at the very base model of anything. I have everything set up with certain amount of RAM due to the fact that this is about content creators and you need more RAM. And I have everything set at a 1 terabyte SSD. However, you take everything according to your budget and you can go up or down from there depending on what your needs are. Starting with the 24-inch iMac with the M4 chip, it has a 10-core CPU and 10-core GPU. I've maxed it out at 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. We're looking at $2,159. Now keep this price in mind for later on when we compare it to other models. So moving forward in this video, I'm not going to focus on the base M4 chip in the Mac Mini or even the MacBook Pro. In these next ones, we're just going to focus on the M4 Pro and then the M4 Max. The Mac Mini has an all-new design. They have made it even smaller, which looks amazing. It now looks like a mini Mac Studio. They even added 2 USB-C ports and an audio jack on the front. But what's inside is most important. You can now get the M4 Pro chip, which doubles the M4 chip's 10-core GPU with a 20-core GPU, making this chip amazing for the content creator and the prosumer. And yes, of course, the Mac Mini does come with the base M4 chip. However, we already looked over that with the iMac, so let's just move forward with the M4 Pro. Now, with the M4 Pro, as you can see on the back of the Mac Mini, they did add the 3 Thunderbolts, which are Thunderbolt 5, which will give you up to 120 gigabytes per second transfer speed. However, you don't really need that for transferring of your files of, say, like 4K video editing files. That will allow you to power multiple devices from just one port. And that makes this little Mac Mini a powerhouse. All that power in the Mac Mini comes with only a 2 inches of height by 5 inches depth and width. Of all the things that were just released, I would say the Mac Mini is probably my favorite thing for the prosumers. You're going to be able to edit your 4K videos, photos, and or your audio very easy with this chip. The limitations are really only going to come from like hardware acceleration. If you're using a lot of motion graphics and things like that become very intensive, then of course your GPU is going to have a little issue there. However, most people are going to fall within the prosumer market and this computer is going to be perfect for them. So let's take a look at the configurations I've set up and the cost of the Mac Mini in that way. The amazing little machine, the Mac Mini with the M4 chip, starts off with a 10-core CPU and 10-core GPU with 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. You can get it for $1,399. The binned M4 Pro chip comes with a 12-core CPU and 16-core GPU, and I put 48 gigabytes of RAM with 1 terabyte SSD for a price of $19.99. The full-powered M4 Pro has a 14-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. I configured with 48GB RAM, 1TB SSD for $2199. However, you can go up to 64GB of RAM with this Mac Mini. However, most people in the prosumer market are only going to need 48GB of RAM. This amazing little Mac Mini is perfect for the prosumer and for the content creator. Next up is the all-new MacBook Pro, which comes with all three of the new chips, the best monitor in the world, and they have all the same ports available for all models. So if you're somebody who needs to be able to get up, move around, not be stuck at a desk, or maybe you like to use a laptop, or maybe you're a digital nomad who wants to be outside at the beach, and if so, then we've got great news for you with this new display. The Liquid Retina display is perfect for on the go, as you can now get 1000 nits of peak brightness and 1600 with HDR, and now available with nano texture display. And as amazing as that display is and everything on the outside of the MacBook Pro, what we now get on the inside is the most impressive, as we can now get the fastest chip yet. The M4 Max is an absolute beast. With the 40-core GPU with the ray tracing, it is more powerful than the M2 Ultra, and with this new media engine, let's hear from Apple what they say how it does in DaVinci Resolve.
Heavy workloads like denoising raw video footage in DaVinci Resolve Studio can now run in real time.
That is crazy power. That is like having a desktop in a small little device without losing any power. You can go anywheres with this and still get the same ability. So now let's take a look at the cost and some options that would be good for a content creator. For the MacBook Pro, we're going to start with the bin chip, which will have 12-core CPU and 16-core GPU, and maximum 48GB of RAM. We have 1TB SSD. The full chip with this 14-core CPU and 20-core GPU at 48GB of RAM and 1TB SSD is what we will take a look at here. Next is the 16-inch. You get the 14-core CPU and 20-core GPU, and I've set this one up with 48GB of RAM and 1TB SSD as well. For the bin chip, we're looking at $2,389, the full M4 Pro $2,559, and the 16-inch we're looking at $2,879 respectively. Now on to the M4 Max with the bin chip with 14-core CPU and 32-core GPU at 36GB of RAM, and I put a 1TB SSD. With the 16-inch M4 Max, we can start with the 14-core CPU and 32-core GPU with 36GB of RAM and 1TB SSD. With the full-powered chip, 16-core CPU and 40-core GPU, I set it up with a 64GB of RAM and 1TB SSD. So let's take a look at the pricing. For the 14-inch bin chip, we're looking at $2,899. For the 16-inch bin chip, we're looking at $3,199. And for the full chip, we're looking at $3,879. Now that we've introduced the new Macs with the M4 chip family, let's break down how they compare to each other and which one might be best for your content creation need. Let's start with the iMac and the Mac Mini. With the M4 chip for $2,159, you get a 24-inch display, the Magic Keyboard, the Magic Mouse, 10-core CPU and GPU with the 32 gigs of RAM. With a 1TB SSD, it's a fantastic option for general consumers or entry-level creators who want a sleek, all-in-one machine. If you're only using basic video editing apps and light workflows, you can even lower the RAM configurations to save a bit on the budget. However, be mindful of it, as you cannot upgrade in the future. The Mac Mini. For the same configuration as the iMac, the Mac Mini starts at $1,399, and that's a $760 less, giving you room to customize your setup with, say, larger monitor or external storage. But if you need more power, the M4 Pro Mac Mini with the 48GB of RAM, 1TB SSD is $1,999 for the bin chip, or $2,199 for the full configuration with a 14-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. This is perfect for the creators needing better multitasking and GPU-intensive workflows like 4K editing videos with light graphics, some color grading, or working with large photo libraries. The Mac Mini shines in flexibility. You can pair it with, say, high-quality, budget-friendly monitors like Innocent. The displays that I use, and your choice of a keyboard or mouse tailored for editing. It's a great option if you don't need the all-in-one convenience of the iMac. Comparing these with the laptops, The 14-inch MacBook Pro with the base chip, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and the 1 terabyte storage, you're looking at $21.99. Compared to the iMac, it's a $40 difference, but you gain portability. Versus the Mac Mini, it's an $800 increase. Going up to the Pro chip, the MacBook Pro with the binned chip with 48 gigabytes of RAM, the cost would be $25.99. That's an increase of $440 over the iMac. However, that comes with a significant boost in power as well as portability for the little bit of extra cost. In comparison to the Mac Mini, the cost increase would be $600. So if portability is not of need, you may want to consider customizing your workspace and using multiple or even larger monitors like my setup. Going a step further with the full-powered M4 chip and the 14-inch MacBook Pro is $27.99 in comparison to $21.99 for the Mac Mini, which is a $600 difference. If you need a little more power, you can increase the RAM to 64 gigabytes in the Mac Mini. However, you are limited with the MacBook Pro as that is already maxed out at 48 gigabytes of RAM. Although the Mac Mini is not a portable computer, it certainly would be easy to take with you to other locations, which you can easily plug into other monitors or even a TV if necessary. It is very small, easy to pack, and with an Apple ecosystem, you can wirelessly connect to a MacBook Pro, an iMac, or other screens by Apple, which I take advantage of my MacBook Pro screen with my Mac Studio all of the time, which works really great for me. Next up, we need to discuss the M4 Max. The M4 Max is a powerhouse, but it comes with a steep cost. The bin chip starts at $600 more than the full M4 Pro chip. It's 36 gigabytes of RAM. Limit on the bin chip might not be enough for your demanding workflows. To truly unlock its potential, and while it can outperform the M2 Ultra, you would need the fully configured chip, which starts at $36.99 with 48 gigabytes of RAM. And if you require 64 gigabytes of RAM, the price jumps to $3,899 for the 14-inch screen or $41.99 for the 16-inch. At these prices, it's worth considering whether a small screen meets your professional needs or if a Mac Studio with a custom setup might offer a better long-term solution. So let's talk about the future releases. The upcoming Ultra chip will not only feature the fastest CPU, but also the fastest GPU performance in the world. However, it will likely cater to businesses due to its high cost. If you are operating in a studio, leasing a Mac Studio with the Ultra chip might be a more flexible and cost-effective option. Or if you need to purchase, you might even be able to save $800 or $1,000 with the Max chip instead of purchasing the laptop. And now as for the rumored iMac Pro, it is expected to feature the M4 Pro, the Max, or even possibly the Ultra chips, combining exceptional power with Apple's best-in-class display. While it's not likely to launch until at least late 2025, it could become the ultimate all-in-one solution for professionals. And if I were to ever get an all-in-one, this most likely would be it. And now for my recommendations on who should get what. Starting with, if you are already on an Apple Silicon Mac, should you upgrade? If you only have a base M1 or M2 and need to go up a level for professional purpose, then it could be a good option. If you already have a Pro, Max, or Ultra chip, you probably do not need to, as your machine, it already runs really efficient. So as you can see here, Camera Guy from Callie Kim channel has given me some feedback. He is a professional who edits tons of videos on his M1 Max Mac Studio and gives me truthful insight on many things, and I work with an M2 Max, which I have the same opinion of. I think we're good to go for another 5 years with these computers. If you do not have Apple Silicon yet, then now is definitely the best time to upgrade if it's something you can afford. So which chip or computer is actually good for you? Let's start with the consumer. If you are only editing basic photos, videos, browsing the web, maybe doing some video calls on Skype and things like that, then the iMac is really a wonderful choice, or even the base M4 chip with the Mac Mini would definitely be great. If needing portability, you may want to wait for the MacBook Air as it will be lighter and more cost-effective than the MacBook Pro. Now for the Prosumer. If you will be doing some advanced photo editing or light 4K editing with, say, like basic color grading, maybe a little bit of motion graphics, and some serious audio work, then the M4 Pro chip will definitely be a worthy upgrade. I personally think the Mac Mini is a powerhouse and gives the most bang for the buck out of everything available. The MacBook Pro is also great if you need to be working on the go or say as a digital nomad. And for the professionals, I think you really need to logically consider your options with the Max chip. I wouldn't just jump in head first with the MacBook Pro unless if you need it immediately or if you need portability. I do think most pros want to weigh their options of whether they're working in the studio or they have to be out working and constantly moving. And as a professional, you may want to consider whether or not you want to make the purchase right now, or if you plan to lease it from Apple through the business. The leasing option may actually be better for you if you want to go up to something else. And thank you, creators, for watching the video all the way through. If you've enjoyed this content, please remember to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.